You know, it's lately said that Disney is taking over the world right now by making movies that are ostensibly for children, but really aimed at the nostalgia and long-term genre fandom sensibilities of 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds. With this one, they've apparently now decided that they'd also like to take whatever money folks 50 to 90 have lying around as well, since even though this is very much a family film that, like the original Mary Poppins, skews to the sensibilities of the very youngest prospective audience members with any remotely grown-up feeling jokes or plot points camouflaged safely in the margins, it does feel like the actual demand for a Mary Poppins sequel as direct thematic continuation of the original must be coming from folks significantly older than the Gen Xers and Millennials that they're selling remakes of The Lion King and Aladdin to, right? Mary Poppins is one of the studio's biggest and best-known non-animated blockbusters. They even made an entire movie about Walt Disney's attempts to secure the rights to it and cast Tom Hanks in it, you know? And unless the entirety of the Disney canon was just banned in your house, period, I imagine most kids of successive generations still had it somewhere in the rotation, but it does unquestionably belong in an entirely different epic of the studio's history, one that's nowhere near as immortal as the animated fairy tales these days. Now, that's not to say it's not good or that I don't like it or I don't think kids today will like it. Quite the opposite in all three cases. It's really pretty delightful if you can let yourself get swept away in the groove of it. More just an observation that though it's a fairly perfect movie content and energy-wise for even very young children, I feel like this is the rare family blockbuster where the older the family member, the more excited they'll be simply about the fact that it exists and pulls off its feels like the first one magic trick, and that is the main angle. The story picks up a couple decades after the 1910 set original with Jan and Michael Banks now grown and looking after Michael's three children in the Banks house following the untimely early death of their mother. What is with all the dead moms this year, Disney? Jesus. Having run into financial trouble, the house is about to be repossessed, and with all hope seemingly lost, the magical and seemingly immortal nanny Mary Poppins arrives, ostensibly to look after the children, but really to once again nudge the grown-ups into getting their shit together and remembering what's important. And as before, that means engaging in a series of lightly comedic adventures, all set to elaborate song and dance numbers involving, though naturally with new songs and new twists on the formula, a visit to an animated world, a miraculous cleanup ritual, a sojourn to meet a wacky relative of Mary's with an oddball living situation inhabited by a celebrity cameo, an elaborate slapstick stunt performance framed around kindly members of London's working class, a somber heartstring tugger let's be serious song that becomes a plot point, and a soaring ode to carefree outdoor merriment that brings it all home. And as before, most of the songs are good, a couple of them are great, the one for the cameo is kind of superfluous and overlong, but whatever. And since I know the Hamilton fans are going to ask, yes, the two that are there pretty much to serve as showcases for Lin-Manuel Miranda, here playing a lamplighter introduced as a former apprentice to Bert the Chimney Sweep from the original, are both really, really good. To be clear, yes, there's a very deliberate beat-for-beat following of the original and the plot and tone at play here. This isn't Christopher Robin or Maleficent, where they're revisiting or recontextualizing the material. They're not trying to tell you anything new about the characters, expand the mythos, change your perception of who Mary is or what she's up to. Everything about this is trying its damnedest to look and feel like a sequel they could have made 2 or 3 years right after the original, but just didn't. And if that's what you're down for and can accept different actors taking on these fairly iconic roles, I think it's going to work for you like it did for me, which is to say quite a bit. What I'm more curious about is how this all plays to anyone who doesn't have any strong nostalgic connection to the original or even the era of Disney musical it typifies. Even in its day, Mary Poppins was a strange thing that really only Walt Disney would have gotten away with releasing, or tried to. A relentlessly up-tempo musical of comedy numbers and patter songs shaped around a morality play of distinctly Americana-flavored family-first homespun wisdom, awkwardly yet successfully transposed into an anachronistically cheerful early 1900s London setting. Who can say if the audience is there for that in 2018, but then again, who but Disney knew they were there for it in the mid-60s? The big overriding question, of course, is how Emily Blunt pulls off Mary Poppins herself, i.e. can anyone revive a character permanently associated with a single iconic performance given by a singular artist that requires one to not only give a fairly difficult turn covering drama, deadpan comedy, banter, also sing and dance in multiple styles. And while it's clear from the moment she arrives on screen that she's achieved the look and affect to an alarming degree, the effect and performance are honestly so good it feels limiting to both actresses to suggest that she merely recreates Julie Andrews. You honestly come away more feeling that Mary Poppins must have been an actual person and now 2 actresses have done uncanny turns as her. I'm sure that more side-by-side comparisons will yield more noticeable differences, but the bottom line is that while the film itself manages an impossible feat simply by being a solid but not exactly as good successor to the original, I kind of feel like it's missing the depths that the big all is lost plunge and crescendo that the stretch from The Life I Lead to Mr. Banks walking back to work alone gives the first one. Whatever the, for the lack of word, magic was that Julie Andrews harnessed, Blunt finds again here, and it's scary how good she is. I mean, yeah, she belts out the songs, dances her ass off, she nails the mannerisms and the poise. You've seen that in the trailers, but there's a few beats early on where they cut to the medium close-up for the mischievous smile just for the audience bit, and you're like, oh, wow, okay, there she is. I was not ready for that. Mary Poppins Returns is a thoroughly enjoyable cotton candy confection of a movie that will also serve as a nostalgia trip of varying levels of intensity for some of a previous, also thoroughly enjoyable cotton candy confection of a movie. 3 stars. I don't know if it's a classic in its own right like the original, but it's a really good time.